Right. Hello and welcome to Morning Brew with me, Graham Hughes. Let's get cracking, shall we? Hello and welcome to Morning Brew on Labour Social. It is Monday, the 4th of September 2023. I'm so sorry I'm incredibly late. I'll let the show run on a little bit today. We have builders round and they decided to turn up just before I was about to go live and kept me talking, and I couldn't just go, all right, I've got to go and literally do a show on YouTube. But now I'm here now. I'm here now. That's the main thing. And I'm wearing a t-shirt. And it's September and I can't believe I'm wearing a t-shirt in December. But there you go. So we're going to talk today about Rishi Sunak and whether he's going to survive the autumn, because things are closing in. Things are well and truly closing in. Simon says it's Beyonce's birthday today. I'm sure that's got nothing to do with the delay. I didn't know it was Beyonce's birthday, but happy birthday, Beyonce. She's a Virgo, surprisingly. Okay, so I wanted to bring up, if I can, I'm going to try and do this while I'm talking to you. There was a show on Radio 4 today. And I'm just gonna try and play this. I hope this works for you. But this is a former top civil servant who it's called Jonathan Slater. His name is, and basically it's him talking about what's happening with the fact that Rishi Sunak didn't just know about the schools crumbling; he actively made the situation so much worse, like so much worse. So I'm just gonna go to this screen here, and oh, you can see a little bit of my green screen. I'll have to let me just jiggle that around. Hang on. There we go. Sorted. The magic of television. And then if I go here and do this, and then do this. Oh, there we go. Oh, that's a lovely still, isn't it? Okay, and then press play. You should be able to listen to this.
When did you know, and what did you advise ministers was the scale of the rebuilding required?
Oh, hang on. I just paused it.
So there was an initial survey that the department carried out before I was the permanent secretary, about 10 years ago. First time such a survey had ever been carried out, because schools were now being run increasingly by the department. A second survey was commissioned in my time, and we saw that the backlog of repairs had increased. We saw the scale of the rebuilding programme that was needed. 300 to 400 schools needed to be replaced per year because of these system-built schools, post-war, concrete, only supposed to have a design life of 30 to 40 years. Therefore, they need to be rebuilt, and we needed to increase the scale of the programme accordingly.
So, to be clear, the Department for Education goes to the Treasury and say, we need money to rebuild 300 to 400 schools a year, and you got what?
So while I was the permanent secretary, we got the funding to replace about 100 schools per year.
A third or a quarter of what you'd asked for?
Absolutely.
What was your reaction when you were told that?
So it's frustrating, of course, when for you the most important thing is the priority to be given to safety. If the Treasury, of course, have got a concern that there's never enough money for everything, but we were able to present them with really good data. We weren't just saying there's a significant risk of fatality. We were saying there's a critical risk to life if this programme is not funded. While I was the permanent secretary in 2018, a concrete block fell from the roof of a primary school. So it wasn't just a risk, it was actually starting to happen. The spending review was completed a year after I left the department, and I was absolutely amazed to see that the decision made by the government was to halve the school rebuilding programme, down from 100 a year to 50 a year.
To be clear then, in the department you were saying we need to rebuild 300 to 400. It became 100 a year, and after you left the department it went down to 50 a year.
Yes, to be clear, we know what's needed, 300 to 400. There's only so much capacity in the construction industry. There's disruption if you close schools and rebuild them. So the actual ask in the spending review in 2021 was to double the 100 to 200. That's what we thought was going to be practical in the first instance. I thought we'd get it, but the actual decision that the Chancellor took in 21 was to halve the size of the programme.
Now, ministers, the Chancellor, of course, was at the time.
Rishi Sunak.
Rishi Sunak.
Now, what ministers will say is, but there is new evidence that things that we thought were a long-term problem, but not an immediate cause of a crisis, we've now been told differently because the evidence has changed and we're reacting accordingly.
So there's no secret about the fact that these concrete system-built schools post-war had a design life of 30 to 40 years. You don't know when any individual concrete block is going to crack because it cracks from the inside, but you know it's going to happen, and it has.
Wow. Well, there you have it. That is just, I mean, that's off the chart, isn't it? That is absolutely off the freaking charts. So there you go. That's the situation this morning. Thank you very much to Johnny Copperhead for the £10 super chat. I had to criticise my neighbour's spelling yesterday. He keeps leaving out letters. He was working on a politics presentation and rather stupidly titled it Tory Cuts. Oh, God, nearly. What a fool. Thank you very much for the £10 super chat. Yeah, sorry, also, I've still got a cold. I haven't quite shaken it yet. But yeah, so that was the Today Show this morning, actually. That was this morning. And essentially, this civil servant, this Jonathan Slater, he's talking about 300 to 400 schools needed to be rebuilt. They only had the budget for 100. And yet, Rishi Sunak, the Chancellor, cut that budget, Chancellor at the time, cut that budget to 50. 50 schools. And he talks about a concrete block falling off in a primary school. This is actually happening now. And the excuse that the Tories are giving at the moment is that the advice has changed. We didn't know about it. They're feigning ignorance, like all criminals do. Oh, I didn't know it was against the rules to steal the crown jewels. I thought they were, public domain. Yeah, okay. I don't think that's a defence in a court of law, but yeah, they're going on the TV and they're claiming that things have changed. They're putting out statements. The Department of Education putting out statements saying, "Oh, but things have changed, since we first learnt about this." They haven't. And the civil servant there, Jonathan Slater, he makes it very clear. We knew when these buildings were built, they were only built for a 30-year lifespan, 30 to 40 years. Now, reinforced concrete has an inherent problem. It's butt ugly, and I'll fight anyone who says otherwise. The other problem it has is it smells of piss. Always. It just does. I don't know why. Maybe it's some ingredient in the design, or maybe it's just used by vagrants to urinate on it. Thirdly, it has rebar in it, which is a metal rod, usually like 4, 5, 6 metal rods embedded in the concrete. And the idea is that none of the elements can ever get to this rebar, because if they do get to the rebar will rust. And when it rusts, it oxidates, is that the right word? It expands and it cracks the actual concrete. And this is a problem with concrete buildings all over the world, especially anywhere near the sea. You get natural erosion of, from the wind, from the rain, from the sea, whatever. And then you only need a little tiny bit to go rusty, and that breaks, it cracks the concrete. And then as soon as the concrete is cracked, you break the water seal, the air seal, and that just goes straight through there, and you're going to have a building that's going to eventually fall down. Now, with aerated concrete, it's exactly the same, pretty much, except you don't see the crack. When the rebar expands, it expands into the holes, the bubbles that are in there. It's like an aerobar. It's been described in the media. It expands into the bubbles, into the space that the bubbles have. So you could look at a beam of this rack stuff, this aerated concrete, and it'll look perfectly okay from the outside. But when you actually look at it from the inside, it's structurally unsound and could collapse at any moment. Now, the government knew this when the schools were built, like 70 years ago. They knew this when they were built. It's not like this isn't new news. This isn't something that's just come along now and gone, oh my God, really? Is that what happens? No, they knew that at the time. That's why they said the buildings should only be up for 30 years. And you know what? If they weren't open for any longer than 30 years, maybe just populate them with Tory MPs rather than the nation's children. You know, put people who are expendable in these buildings rather than the nation's children. But the government, the Tories, they not only backheeled Labour's Building for the Future for Schools programme in 2010, which saw over £50 billion put aside to rebuild over 700 schools. For this very reason, because they were crumbling. And this problem, Michael Gove backheeled that. He got rid of the whole programme when he was Education Secretary. Now this is our 9th Education Secretary since Michael Gove left in about 2014. So in less than 10 years, we've had 9 Education Secretaries. Each one of them has had this issue come across their desk at some point. And every single one of those soulless, heartless, child-endangering bastards looked at it and went, oh, no, that's fine. It's okay to put your children in danger because this ain't happening in the private schools. All of those Tory ministers went to private school or have children in private school, or both. They don't care. Why should they care? It's not their kids who's going to be crushed by falling masonry. No, it's going to be yours or mine. Somebody else's problem. There's an idea in The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy in the 3rd book in the restaurant at the end of the universe. No, Life, the Universe and Everything is the 3rd one, which is about there's somebody else's problem field, which a spaceship can project, and everyone just assumes it's someone else's problem. So a spaceship can land in the middle of Lords in the middle of a cricket match, and no one will notice it because they just assume it's someone else's problem, and they just ignore it, and they can't see it because of this field like it's generated around the spaceship. I mean, it's a great idea. I mean, Douglas Adams' writing is amazing anyway, but I mean, just that concept, it's bang on. It's 100% bang on, isn't it? It is exactly as it is. Skylar Jones says, it's not just crumbling roofs, it's crumbling everything. Hospitals are falling apart. Yes, it's also hospitals. Shortage of resources, books, staff. Austerity creates huge risk to life and life chances. Very good point, Skylar. And it goes to the heart of the big problem here, the big issue that we are facing in our time. And it is a crisis of crises. We have got a cost of living crisis. We've got an environmental crisis. We've got the climate crisis, obviously. We've got the sewage in the rivers crisis. We've got an infrastructure crisis. And what happened was, after the war, we've been bombed. Things needed to be rebuilt. Things desperately needed to be rebuilt. And also, we had built stuff out of stupid stuff. We had built stuff out of asbestos and things. Things needed to be rebuilt. And the government at the time was still recovering from the war. We took a massive loan out from the Americans, the Marshall Plan. And we were struggling to get back on our feet. And it did take, don't forget, from the end of the war to actually us getting back on our feet, it took about 35 years. It took a long time to get back on our feet. But the assumption was, in the 50s and 60s, when they were building these temporary prefab and aerated concrete buildings, that they would only be temporary. It would just be a temporary solution that people would use for a few decades at most, and then we would be a prosperous nation again, like we were before the war, and would have enough money to fix all these problems. And I've got to say, between the 1980s and 2008, yeah, we went great guns. That period, the economy picked up, even under Thatcher, despite everything that she did. Then underneath the major years, but it really picked up under Labour. Under Labour, our economy, the economic size doubled between 97 and 2007. And obviously we hit the brakes when we had the credit crunch. And we can talk about deregulating banks and how much problems that caused, etc., etc. But that's not the point here. That's not the point I'm trying to make. The point I'm trying to make is that our forebears did not even consider the fact that 50, 60, 70 years hence, that A, these buildings would still be up, and B, that the people in charge of the country would impose economic sanctions on ourselves by imposing Brexit, would mismanage the economy so badly, would make our borrowing exceed our GDP, would have inflation rocketing up to 11% inflation, interest rates going back up again, like they did in the past. I mean, they thought we'd have it sorted by now. They thought we'd be a stable, prosperous nation. But unfortunately, the downfall of capitalism is exactly the same as the downfall of communism. It's human greed. The reason why those two systems do not work is human greed. It's funny that, isn't it? What we need to do is have a system that addresses and takes on board the fact that human greed is an issue. It's something that will not go away. And a bit like drugs, we need to make sure that it is well regulated rather than just made illegal, because making something illegal never really works. So we need to find a way of essentially making greed something that is frowned on by society rather than rewarded when people go, well, you know, I made £2 million last year, but I only paid £2 in tax. And all the little friends around clap, they applaud. Oh, well done for only paying a little bit of tax. That's wonderful. Anyway, so that's my point on that. Slightly off topic, but they talk about the funds to fix the House of Commons. I'd let that place burn down over repairing schools and hospitals, says Nick and Diff. Nick, I mean, it's a beautiful building. I don't want to see it gone. I'd feel the same as I felt when Notre Dame went up in flames. I'd feel like we had lost a huge part of ourselves in that building, in the building. As for Parliament itself, I think, I'm talking about the Palace of Westminster. As for Parliament itself, they need a new building. They need a new building. It is bizarre. I don't know if any of you watching this have been in the House of the Palace of Westminster. It's like an old boarding school. It really is. I mean, down to you'll go into one of those rooms that they use like for select committees and things, and there's desks with like a little ink hole, you know, for putting your little ink pot in. Dab your pen and writing on your bit of slate, a bit of chalk. It's like, it's really arcane. And the design of it with, first of all, not enough seats, which is disgraceful and discriminatory against anyone who's disabled. But also having that system where you have one side here and one side there and they shout at each other. I don't think that's conducive. I used to think it was cool. I used to think, well, wouldn't it be nice if someone was shouting at the President of the United States every week that he was an idiot and justifying what he's done, which doesn't really happen. I mean, they might get a few questions fielded to them by hostile journalists for CNN or CBS or whatever, but they're not going to get the same sort of rinsing as leaders in this country get in Prime Minister's questions. So maybe that would be a good format to keep as a thing, but I think in general that the way that the assembly room is set up, it should really be more circular like it is in the States and the EU Parliament and other parliaments around the world, just to make it a little bit more conducive to working together. Jamie Ashton says, eat the rich. In the comments there, I'm not going to argue against that because, yeah, I'm fairly convinced that if you crack enough rich people open, treasure will come out. Like in video games. Agree game. Parliament needs a new building and OC needs to be a museum or something. It's completely unfit for purpose and a massive fire risk. They have fire wardens working there. Oh, I know. They've had like 11 fires in the last few years. I mean, it's so in danger of burning down. The electrics are all over the shop. It's just, yeah. Jeremy says the priorities are all wrong. We need wealth taxes and decent government to protect citizens. Yeah, we do. We absolutely do. But I did a video about wealth taxes, why Labour had dropped them, and I gave like 3 of my ideas of why they might have done this, and there were quite a few comments which I agree with. They're saying, well, actually, what they are best doing when they get into power is closing the loopholes, because that doesn't require an act of parliament to do it. You just literally close the loophole. You can use statutory instruments to do that. If the law's already been made and there's a loophole that people are exploiting, you can use a statutory instrument. You don't need to have a vote on it. You just do it. So closing loopholes, I think, is the number one thing that Labour government need to do. Then they need to, in terms of revenue, sorry, I mean, I'm not talking here about all the other things Labour's got to do when it gets into power. Oh my God, it's going to be like clearing up after the worst, I'd say house party, but it's bigger than that. It's like a music festival that's gone horribly wrong. Like Burning Man with all the mud mixed with the worst years of Glastonbury, 97, 98, 2007, I think, and the Fire Festival. It's just, and Woodstock 99. It's just all gone wrong. Everything that could go wrong has gone wrong. And now there's just carnage, there's mud, there's dead people, there's traumatized people, and like there's a mass scale. And Labour are going to turn up with like 11 people and a mop and be like, right, let's get started. And it's like, oh my God, do you realise the scale of the stuff you got to do? But to bring in a wealth tax and to do a lot of things that we need to do, like environmental protections, unfortunately, first, we need to neuter the billionaires. That's the first thing that Labour need to do. They need to get Leveson 2 off the ground. Make sure, Leveson 2 off the ground. And make sure, absolutely 100%, that these people no longer control the means of communication in this country. Because at the moment, they control the narrative. They control what vast swathes of the population think. They control probably what your mum or dad or nan or granddad think. They control that. Their view is informed by billionaires who usually don't live here. Phil Morehouse, really good idea. He said, well, what we should do is make it so that if you own papers in this country, you have to live in this country for 10 months of the year. That's a great idea. And you can only own one title. So Murdoch will have to make the decision whether to continue owning the Times, which is quite a prestige newspaper, or continue with the Sun, which is the scummiest newspaper on the planet. And I look down on anyone who reads the Sun because it's beyond garbage. It's vile. It's vile. It's just vile. I know as a Scouser, I'm supposed to say that, but no, I really mean it. It's just horrific. Pete Turner says the adversarial approach encourages 4 legs good, 2 legs bad mentality. Real life is more nuanced, so we can agree on some things and disagree on others. Yeah, Pete, that's very true. We mustn't forget Jeremy Hunt was advised by the big banks when making his first budget after Truss. You know what this leads to? More money for them. Oh, absolutely. I mean, the first thing that Rishi Sunak did, wasn't it, when he got into power, was reduce, was get rid of the limitations on bankers' bonuses. Would somebody think of the bankers? Oh, the humanity. Close loopholes, land tax and higher corporation tax to get all the money they need. Yeah, and Richard, you got a good point there. So if you tax individuals, there is the argument that they'll leave. And all things being equal, if you had the money right now, would you stay here? Don't think I would. But with corporations, it's different because it's not like McDonald's are going to pull all of its restaurants in the UK. It's not like Starbucks are going to pull all its coffee shops. It's not like Amazon are going to pull all its products. I mean, they've got these massive warehouses set up. We've got them over a barrel. They can't leave. They can't leave because they've already set up here. It would be such a financial hit for them. So, you know what? Twist the bloody rack. Make the pip squeak. Put the tax up to as much as you can possibly get, with it still being worth their while to stay in the UK, but paying the absolute maximum that you can get them to pay while staying in the UK. You know, say they make they make let's just pluck a figure out the air. They make £500 million, probably more than that, but like let's say they make £500 million a year in the UK, right? You tax them at 50%. They're going to look at that and go, God, that's a lot of tax. That is a lot. Wow, 250 million just for one company. Yeah, but if we leave the UK, that other 250 million, we're not going to get that anymore. And then they've got also, you know, the money they've already invested. And what are they going to do? I mean, they've taxed the hell out of them. They're not going to go to the WTO and say, oh, they're taxing us too much. Say, well, no, we're taxing all companies here that much if you want to trade in the UK. And that's not being headquartered. This is one of the loopholes that drives me mad. Is go, no, Amazon, not Amazon, Google. It's my YouTube corporate daddy. They're headquartered in Dublin, in Ireland. So when we get the statements from from there for being a YouTube partner, it always comes from Dublin, comes from Ireland, and that's a tax loophole. And that's so they don't have to pay their fair share of tax in the UK, which is wrong. They should have to pay their fair tax. Surely they should have. Everyone should pay their fair share of tax. It should just be normal. And he says, even if these massive corporations did want to leave, you could replace them. They're not irreplaceable. Ernie, I can't disagree. I can't disagree, mate. You're absolutely right. And Paul says, so what if the billionaires leave? They don't pay their way. Very true. You know, I mean, it is massively unfair that the people who cause the most damage to the environment and to the local environment in terms of like churning up the roads with their Chelsea tractors and things, because they need the heaviest cars on the road for some reason, are the ones who pay the least proportion in tax. And then we have taxes that are just really, really unfair taxes. Parking fines are unfair because for you and I, £40 is quite a lot of money. I mean, that's more than I earn in a day on doing these videos on YouTube. And like, if I get a parking ticket now, that is a fair bloody whack of my income. Whereas, if you are a multi-billionaire, what's it to you? You can park your Lamborghini on the pavement outside Selfridges, and you'll get a ticket. It'll be 40 quid. Yeah, there's nothing. I'd pay that for parking. In fact, when I went to see Blair in at Wembley Arena, the parking was 50 quid. The parking was £50. I think if you were parked illegally, the fine would have been £40. So you just park illegally because it's cheaper than actually parking. And speeding fine as well. Someone said in the comments the other day that they do actually take into account income when giving speeding fines, but I thought that's not fixed penalty notices, is it? I'm talking about fixed penalties here, and I think it's £100 for speeding, which is a lot for me, a lot for many of you watching this, I assume, but it's nothing to a millionaire. Like, who cares? They get caught speeding. They're more worried about getting points on their license because they don't want to lose their license. But as far as the money is concerned, they're like, yeah, so what? Who cares? And the biggest, most regressive tax that we've got to deal with at the moment, because it's something that everyone has to pay, so it's effectively a poll tax, and it's been called a poll tax by Martin Lewis and Martin's money saving expert fame, is the fuel duties that we're having to pay, or the cost of heating our houses, the energy like costs, which are going to be sky high this winter. There's going to be hardly any government support for people, and everyone's got to pay the same. And it doesn't really matter if you've got a 2-bedroomed house or a 5-bedroomed house. It's about the same, and the standing charges are the same. It's going to be like £25 a week or something for standing charges alone. I mean, it's just it's ridiculous, and people have to pay that, even if they don't use any bloody energy that week, because it's a standing charge, and everyone has to pay the same. It's regressive. It's not fair. And these are things that the government could address, but they won't. We're having some electrical work done outside the house today. And I was just talking to the electrician, and there's a job that needs to be done. And essentially, because of privatization, 4 companies would have to be involved in it getting done. 4 different companies would have to be involved. When it was all just nationalized, the electrical company who are here now could turn up and just fix everything. But no, that's not our responsibility. That's that's Northern Power Grid or something, and then another company would have to come along and do this particular thing, and then another one would have to. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me! It's just privatization. It's great. Streamlines the system, eh? Do you mean the standing charges? Yeah, Richard. I'm talking about the standing charges are the same no matter the size of the property. I think. I don't know. Someone correct me if I'm wrong about that. The Great British Video Gamer, if you have 10 billion, you get a medal that says you won capitalism. The rest of the money should have 100% tax. I think over 100 million. 100 million, 100% tax. That's it. We need to get rid of inheritance tax as well, because I want people to pull themselves up by their bootstraps and not be, born into money and then just get loads of money when their parents cark it and use that money to make more money. No, I want everyone to start on the same level. I want a level playing field. If you're not going to enrich people who haven't got much to start with, then we're going to just have to take money off the rich people to make it fair, right? You're still on your own 2 feet. I'm sure Rishi Sunak, if he'd been born in a slum in Somalia, would have made all the money he did with the brains he's got. Yeah. there's never. Ned says there needs to be tighter rules about businesses that appear to make money but never fail. Either they're being run for influence or the profits are disappearing offshore. Yeah, you're right. Higher taxes leads to investment, not less tax. Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with that, Daniel. I think that the idea that we would tax these companies so much that they would leave the country is for the birds. No, they're not going to leave. They're not going to leave. I'd say 100% certainty they will not leave just because you tax them at a bit of a higher rate. So, right, we are going to sign off now. So thank you very much for joining us. Thanks for the super chat. Or super chat, I think I'm going to go on today. But thank you very much for that. I will be back at 7 o'clock. No, sorry, shit. Okay, hang on. Let's do that again. Cut, edit. I'll be back at 8 o'clock tonight for the first episode of The Swear Jar. This is something that me and Tansky, Super Tansky, have been working on for a little while, trying to put together the format and how it's going to work. 8 o'clock tonight, The Swear Jar here on Labour Social, live. Join in. And the gimmick is we're not allowed to swear. If we swear, we've got to put 50p in the swear jar. If you want us to swear, you have to pay. You have to give us some money in the super chat, and we will then swear. But otherwise, if we do that, we've got to put 50p in and give it to charity. The drilling has commenced. I told you we've got the builders in today. The drilling has commenced. So that is my signal. That's my bell. That's my toll to get out of here. But thank you very much for joining us. Thanks for all the chat and the super chats. And until 8 o'clock tonight, I'll say thanks for watching. Hello, good evening, and goodbye.